Hi everyone, this is Talk Back. Guess what? It's December. It's December 2022. We're getting ready for the start of a new year. And what do we do in December? We always review what's happened. What were the good things that happened? What were the bad things that happened? How can we improve? What are the insights we learned? As the curtain of life starts closing down on the year, what do we think about going forward or looking back? So it's very appropriate that today I have someone who is sunrise, sunset, looking about the past, looking about the future. She's written a book. Not all of us, when we reflect on what's been going on, can write a book. That takes a lot of energy, a lot of perseverance, a lot of smarts, a lot of history. And I'm very happy to say that I have Millie Devine with me. Hi, Millie.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice to be here.
Millie. And Millie has written a book, sort of like her sunrise, sunset, her December look at life. It's called Sunrise, Sunset, Millie's Divine Journey. And of course, it's a play on words, D-I-V-I-N-E. And Millie, D-I-V-I-N-E, sort of implies almost like a God-like mystical journey. Is that part of your journey?
It is, absolutely. I have a very strong faith. And so I had to bring that in and to share experiences.
Okay.
When I knew the good Lord was with me.
So we're going to talk about your journey because, you know, you grew up in the same era sort of that I did, where little girls may not have been as important as little boys, where the women's movement was just starting to roil around.
Yes.
And you had lots of experiences and lots of insights.
Yes.
So I guess the first question is, as I just said, you know, we're at that stage in life where I suppose we can say we should always be reflecting at every stage.
Right.
Looking about tomorrow and what did we do yesterday and how do we progress and go forward. But I guess when you get to December in your life, it's time to really look back. And what is it that impelled you to say, you know what, I have things to say and I'm going to put it in a book? Why'd you do that?
Because of a dear friend, Jean Siegel, who I'm sure you know from the Guard Art Center, along with her husband, Steve. And Jean kept insisting, Millie, you have got to write your book. And I had not planned on writing a book at all, so I did not keep a journal. I didn't keep diaries or anything like that. But I kept saying, no, 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 no. And finally, about the third time, she brought it up and she said, Millie, you have got to write your book and I will help. And I thought, oh God, now I'm in trouble. I've got to write it. And so I knew I wouldn't write the book as long as I kept working. So I retired 5 years ago from banking and talk a lot about the banking in my book.
Okay, but when she said to you, you have to write a book,
right.
She must have been thinking that you have some insights, some lessons about life that other people could learn from.
Exactly.
What was she thinking about?
Well, most people, I expected to get married. That didn't work out for me. I've been single all my life. And so I've been very much in the community. And as my family dwindled, the community has become my family. And so I've been involved in so many nonprofits over the years, as I know you have as well, and including the Resurrection of the Guard and all of that, hiring Steve. I was on that committee that hired Steve, and all these different aspects of things. And she said, there's so much history. We need to preserve what was going on back in the 70s and 80s. And so that's why we did.
Okay,
so,
but I guess we'll talk about it. It's not just about what happened in the community. It's
right.
a reflection of your role in it, how you felt about it, and
right.
your life's
and I just
journey.
have a passion for the community.
Right.
Yes.
Because you say it's your journey. It's not the community's journey.
No,
but
exactly.
So let's go back. Let's start at the beginning.
Good place to begin.
I read that you went to school in the Midwest, and so I asked you, are you a Connecticut native? And you said, oh my goodness, I've been living in this exact same house for, so tell about that.
For my whole life.
Okay.
With the exception of, I lived in Boston for about 3.5 years. When I went to school up there, got a job through the school and worked in Boston. And consequently, that was during the period back in the late 61 to 63, was the time of the Boston Strangler. And so I was living there at that time.
Ooh, yeah.
Yes. So that's part of the intrigue about what was going on in the book itself. So I talk about that. And then the company I was working for when I graduated moved to Woburn, Massachusetts. So that meant I couldn't just take the T to get to work. Now I had to have a car, and I was under 25, and I had to pay compulsory insurance. And the pay did not go up, but the company moved to Woburn, Massachusetts, where you had to commute every day to get there. So I moved to Waltham, which was a little bit closer, and had a ride or one of the other.
Okay, we got to go way back,
Yeah.
though. You're going too far ahead for
Okay.
me. I want to start
All right.
way back. Let's go
Okay.
back to the beginning of your life.
Okay.
Where were you born?
I was born at Lawrence Memorial Hospital in New London.
There you go. And
Yes.
what is your address? What was the? You don't have to give the exact address, but what street and town did you live in? Where you
Well,
still
I'm
live?
town of Waterford, village of Quaker Hill, and at Bloomingdale Road.
And it's the same house you're living in now.
My mother moved to the property when she was 11 years old.
Oh my God! What year was that? A long time ago.
Yeah, exactly. Well, she was born 1907.
And you've just turned 80.
I just turned 80. Yes.
Okay,
In
wow.
January, last January.
So, all right. How many brothers and sisters did you have?
I have one sister, Kathleen,
Okay.
and she was 4 years older than I am.
Okay. She's still with us?
No, unfortunately, she passed in the year 2000 very suddenly.
Oh, okay.
So
And
that's part of the book as well.
so tell me more about your family or lack of family.
My family, my parents, we were a very close-knit family. My mom was a teacher. My dad worked for Wonder Bread, and he, delivered the bread loaves and Twinkies and all that good stuff to the local grocery stores. So he left the house very early in the morning and had a long day and, all of that. My mom went back to teaching when I was 3 years old. So she was off for the period my sister was born in 1938.
So that was pretty pioneering. Many teachers did not have children. A lot of school systems around the country didn't even let you teach if you were pregnant or had children.
Exactly.
And so what made your mother such a pioneer? Was it a necessity? Did they need the money for her job?
If they wanted to save for our college and all of that, which they did, and yes, my father wasn't making a lot of money at Wonder Bread, and so I'm sure she did it to supplement the income. She actually ended up being my first grade teacher.
Your mother? Mm-hmm. Well, so,
It was a class of 38 children, and she was my teacher.
Was that the only first grade class? Or,
It was the only first grade.
so that's why they couldn't move you to another class. So
Exactly. Yes, and interesting little tidbit. As I progressed in school, I always said she regressed, because when I went on to second grade, she ended up with a class of 30 first graders and 8 second graders.
Okay.
And then when I went on to third grade, the kindergarten became full-time, so she backed up, and she
So let me ask you this. As a role model, as a parent, what did you learn from your mother?
I learned all kinds of things from both of them. She was a doer. She was active, as a teacher and in the extracurricular activities that were required, for the teachers to be involved and go on and study additional courses and all of that. She was an inspiration to me, as was my dad. My dad, nobody ever said you can't do, as far as my immediate family was concerned. Now, other people, yes. Oh, you'll never be able to do that. Can't do it. Everything was always negative.
Right.
And I said,
You grew up at a time where the women's movement was just beginning.
Yes.
Did you, read Betty Friedan's book, The Feminine Mystique? Was that something that grabbed your attention? Because that was the first big sort of cataclysmic explosion of, hey, we're out here, women. We're going to get out of the homemaker role that's been consigned to us for the most part. Not that every woman did that. They were always pioneers. In every generation, they were pioneers. But how did that movement hit you?
It hit me from the standpoint of men and women are equal. And I'm going to show them. And so I did. But in a quiet way, rather than going out there and blah, 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 doing all this great stuff and everything else. Just a quiet way of just working my way up.
Because, I had little girlfriends in school, in elementary school and junior high school, who purposely did not do perfect on exams, which they knew they could have, because they did not want to feel like the weight of the excellence was on their shoulders. They wanted to play a more submissive role. Did you come through any of that? Did you have any of those feelings?
No, no. Yeah. I wanted to succeed.
And so were you a good student?
I was driven. I was a good student.
And socially, did you have a lot of friends growing up?
I did have friends, but I was not in the most popular group kind of thing. I mean, there were always those who were the athletes and, you know,
right.
all these kinds of things. So there were things that I was not.
Did you consider yourself an intellectual compared to some of the other kids at school?
I didn't really think about that aspect of it.
Right. So when you were in, did you go to junior high? Where did you go to junior high?
Clock Lane.
Okay. What were you thinking about life then? Were you going to grow up to be something? I wanted to be, when I was in elementary school, I wanted to be Nancy Drew.
Oh.
Because I wanted to be a detective
right.
and find things out, or a newspaper reporter. And I loved the fact that she had her girlfriend's name was George. To me, that was like the greatest, right? So what did you want to be when you were in 6th grade,
I figured I probably
grade,
would follow
grade?
in my mother's footsteps and become a teacher.
Okay.
And so that was the direction I was going. And then when I got into high school and started taking business courses in addition to the college prep courses, I took the business courses as electives, so the typing, the shorthand, and accounting. And I thought, and I admired my business education teacher at the high school, Dr. Arthur Hadfield. And so I wanted to be like he was.
Did you ever get to the point where somebody said in the school setting, no, you can't do that? I took chemistry in college, and I was the only girl in the class, and somebody came over and said, well, you can't go on and do that. It's not for girls. I mean, that's back in the 60s. Did you ever encounter anything like that?
I did, from the standpoint by graduation, I was a class of 155 students, and I ranked 10th in the class of 155. However, I was not eligible for the National Honor Society because I had taken business courses as electives.
Really?
Yes.
That's unusual. Well, one of the crimes is
that was one of the things that they
divided you up into the academic group versus the commercial group. And I noticed that in some years, the academic kids never took typing.
Right.
So they spend their lives hunting and pecking with their index fingers. Well, I learned how to type in high school because we had to. It was part of it was required.
Exactly.
And it's very important.
And it put me in good stead because I ended up going on and becoming a secretary.
All right, well, that's another question. Yeah. That's what we're going to get to. All right, so you're in high school. You went to which high school?
Waterford High School, first graduating class in 1960
wow.
from Waterford High School.
All right, any memorable things to think about back then?
I think of all of the first that we had, because we were the first, from the time we were in 8th grade, we were seniors. So we were always treated as such. Some people got tired of our class being seniors, but we were.
And you go to all your reunions? Are you a big reunion person?
I'm a big reunion fan. We're still in touch. In fact, we've gotten to the point now where we enjoyed our 50th so much. We did have our 60th, but we continued having the committee meet on a quarterly basis after our 50th. And we've continued to do that today.
So when you say quarterly, every few, how many years?
No, I'm saying a quarterly per year.
Oh, wow.
So we would get together 4 times a year.
Oh, that's terrific.
Yeah.
And of course, sadly, you've probably lost some.
Oh, we've lost a number of our classmates.
So about how many do you get at one of these gatherings?
Probably on the quarterly basis, maybe in the neighborhood of 25 to 30.
That's still great. That's fantastic.
Well, I mean, that includes spouses, too, so it's not necessarily all classmates.
Yeah, but that's still a fantastic record.
Right.
All right, so...
But now I also find that the ladies get together and have their luncheon, the men get together and have their luncheon, and then we come together and have a joint luncheon.
All right. Who were the stars of the class? Were they men or you would say that of the 10, how many were men and how many were women of those 10 top students?
Oh. I think it might have been hard to say. I would say roughly 50-50.
Okay.
Because you had so many cheerleaders, you also had all the sports people and all of that. So, and some of them were good in everything they did.
Right, okay.
So.
All right, so now we're on to college. Was there ever any doubt that you would be going on to college?
Oh, no, I went off to Central Connecticut State College at that stage of the game, which is now university. But got there, and I was put in a situation that was rooming with 2 other gals, so there were 3 of us. One was constantly homesick, one was terribly outgoing, and there I was in the middle. And our room happened to be right on a hallway that went between the reception area on one end and the other end. And so the girl that was very outgoing would have the boys walk her to the door of the room, which we weren't crazy about.
I'm surprised they even allowed boys in the dorms at that point.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. They weren't supposed to, but...
So what happened?
Anyhow, well, finally we got to later in the semester and things, and some of the kids were beginning to drop out and all of that. I made it through the first semester. I went back for the second semester and tried to make appointments with my advisor, but she was too busy with her pets, and even though we had an appointment, she did not keep it. And she finished with her pets, came out and said, "I'm sorry, I don't have time to speak with you now. My mother's waiting for me downstairs." Oh. So I said, "All right, I'll go see the dean." So I went in to see the dean and told her my situation and where I was at and what I was looking for. And she just took a box of tissues and put it in front of me. "Have a good cry for yourself, you'll feel better."
Tough love, I guess, is what they call that?
I was livid. I was livid because she hadn't heard anything I said. You know, she was just, you know, belittling as far as I was concerned. And I went out and called my parents. I said, "This is not the place for me. I'm sorry, I know you've already paid for it, and you're going to lose money doing it, but I need to come home, and I'll go back to Sears and work in the credit department where I've been working in high school." And, you know, so, you know, I've got that all set. And that's what I did. But then my mother, being a teacher.
So you left Central and you went back home and you went back to work at Sears.
At Sears in the credit department.
Okay.
And so then my mother kept after me and said, "You're not going to work at Sears the rest of your life. You know, you got to go on to school. I don't care where you go, you pick it." Well, by then I'd had a taste of earning my own money and having some spending money. And this was great as far as I was concerned. So I spotted we got the Boston Globe or the Boston Advertiser or whatever it was called at that particular time. And there was an ad for, trying to think, I just stop and think. It was Graham Junior College. And they had a work-study program. And since I was doing secretarial work and all of that, I could work and learn at the same time. And so I got my job through the school. And so I went to classes mornings and then worked afternoons. And it happened to be because of the courses I'd taken in high school that I could complete the program in 1 year rather than the 2 years. So when it came time for graduation, the school informed me that because I had not been involved in extracurricular activities, which I'd always been involved in high school, but that 1 year you're running off, you know, you're in classes and you got to get the tea and get off to work.
Right.
When was the time to get into extracurricular? Anyhow, so I didn't that year, and they were absolutely right. But because of that, I did not become the valedictorian of the class.
Oh, did you know what the requirements were for that before you? And they didn't advise you of that, so that's not fair.
Yeah. It was what it was.
Right, life's not fair.
Exactly, exactly. And so.
But otherwise, you were second in your class?
Yes.
You were salutatorian of your graduating class at Graham. Is that place still exist?
No, it does not.
Okay, but it was in the
It was
city
Cambridge
of
School of Business to begin with, then it became Graham Junior College,
okay.
and that's what I graduated from. But.
And What town was it in? Was it in the city?
It was in Boston.
In the city?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right on Boylston Street.
And that's why you said you stayed in the Boston area and went to Woburn and so forth and so on.
And then when the company moved to Woburn, which goes back to what I was saying before, it was costing me to work there. And I didn't feel right taking a day off and go looking for another job. That wasn't right to call in sick or anything like that because that wasn't honest. And so I was home for the holidays and talking with my dad. My dad and I were very, very close. And he laid out this plan. He said, well, you know, you could move home. That thought never even crossed my mind that I could move home. I thought once you're out on your own, you're out there, sink or swim,
right?
Kind of thing, or swim or, you know, sink, whatever, however the phrase goes. So he said, they've been good to you. Go back, give them a month's notice, and then come home. Take a couple weeks for yourself because you won't get vacation this year, and then start looking for a job. And when you get a job, you start paying rent. Well, that all sounded like a very good business deal to me, and I was very happy to do that, and that was good. So I did. So I moved home.
Now, when all this is happening, in your own mind, what's your ambition? Do you have a goal into the future as to where you want to wind up, what kind of work you want to do, what you want to learn? Did you know about that, or were you just kind of playing it by ear as you went along?
I was playing it a lot by ear as to what was available and all that, and I started looking for jobs. You know,
but it sounds like you wanted to be in the business world.
Yes, very definitely. In fact, my high school class had told me, or you know, at the end of when we were graduating, most likely to succeed in business.
Okay. So
yes, I definitely knew it was going.
Did you have a lemonade stand in high school or something like that? Did you do projects that were business oriented? Wasn't there also a group in high school, Future Business Leaders or something?
Yes.
Like, were you part of that?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, it was all, you know, just, this is where I say the good Lord was helping me with my plan and kind of guiding me along, but I didn't know it at that time.
So when you came back home,
I came back home.
When did you, and you started paying rent? And what kind of job did you get at that point?
Okay. I went to the unemployment agency, and they, well, first of all, my father, when I got home, said he thought a bank would be a nice place for a young lady to work. And he had talked with the branch manager and the secretary there and all of that. But sort of bristles sort of went up on me, and I thought, Millie's got to do it her way. Daddy's not getting her the job. So I started looking for jobs and not finding anything I liked. And then I took myself to the unemployment agency, and they said, we have a bank looking for a secretary. I said, oh, what bank? And they said, we can't tell you unless you go for the interview. Well, I'll go for the interview.
Now, was it the same one your father was telling you about?
It was the same person that she gave me the name of.
Right.
I interviewed with her, got the job on the spot, and started the following.
And what was the name of that bank?
It was Hartford National Bank and Trust Company.
Okay.
Back then.
Okay.
This is back in when did I join the bank? 65.
All right. And so, but at some point you did go back to school, to college.
Did. While I was working at the bank, and I was a secretary at Hartford National. And
so West Hartford, was it West Hartford first?
No, this was in New London.
Okay, you said West Hartford.
No, it was Hartford National.
Hartford
Bank.
National, okay.
Yeah. And, oh, now I lost my train of thought.
You were working as
a secretary and all of that. But I started taking courses through the American Institute of Banking. And that led me towards going on and getting my bachelor's degree. Plus, there was also a young man who was a Cornell graduate and came in, and he was so sure of himself, and he kept putting me down. Yeah, as a woman.
Competition, didn't want competition.
Right, exactly. And you know, all that did was get my juices going, like I'll show him. But anyhow, he finally went on and took a job elsewhere. So he became an itch in somebody else's side instead of mine. And I continued working my way up at the bank. So yes, then there was also, I know I had mentioned to you the Thames Club. This was a male-only social club, as there were many of them around the world. But they did not admit women and all this. And of course, women were beginning to come up through the ranks of business. And so we had the Thames Club, and I don't pick on them because I said there were so many
Right.
around. But that club almost kept me from getting the regional manager's job for the eastern third of Connecticut. And because they would not admit women, and because all the men from the bank had belonged to the club, and it was just across the street from us.
You had to be part of the old boys network.
Exactly, and because that's how would I get any business accomplished, bring in any new business,
Right.
because I wouldn't be able to
Right.
interact with these people.
So don't tell me, were you the pioneer in opening up the Thames Club?
Yes, ma'am. I was the first paying woman member.
Okay.
They had a woman club manager at that time, and she became the first woman member.
Okay.
That they awarded to her, but I was first paying member. And
well, at the same time that was happening to women, it was happening to Jews, it was happening to blacks,
absolutely,
who were not allowed in these private social clubs,
exactly,
where
exactly.
the world of business was decided.
Right. And I'm delighted to say, today, open to everybody.
Right.
You know.
Exactly.
So
yeah. And so that was in the 60s.
That was what was going on as I was trying to come up through the ranks.
Right.
And I had a boss who was not particularly supportive, because he'd be over at the club having this luxurious luncheon, come back, tell me all about it, and say, Millie, you're just going to have to get your placard out and march up and down State Street in front of the club to admit women.
Right. Well,
and
all
he knew
this was
darn well.
happening. Did you? I know you said you had opposition from guys like that, which
Right.
is understandable, knowing the history. Did you have a mentor? Did you have some, besides your parents, who were obviously supportive of you? Did you have a mentor? Was there somebody out there who was looking out for you, or who you could look to for advice, for insights?
The first boss I had at Hartford National was that mentor to me, Clark Mosley. And he had a daughter, he had a son, but he was very supportive in, trying to get me to move up and take on some of these other jobs, because basically, even though I was hired as a secretary, I was doing the jobs of that the other secretaries didn't want to do.
Right.
So it just kind of got pushed to me.
Well, we know Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a lot of the famous justices of the Supreme Court started out as legal secretaries or in work.
One of our fabulous mentors.
Far inferior to the capabilities that they had. Yep. And it took a while for people to see that. And we're still not done yet. I mean, still most of the big corporations in America are mostly male-oriented. Right. We still live in I think, a male-dominated society for the most part.
We are.
Patriarchal, as I call it. It's going to take a while. And the sad thing is that I don't know, and you can talk about this, if we're doing a good enough job with our young men to treat them, how to have healthy relationships with women, how to mentor women and support women. I want you to talk about this. The women's movement that you lived through, gave women consciousness to say, I have value, I have worth, I can do the same job as a man, I can make a contribution. And women have advanced in that way. But have the men come along with them, is my question.
Some have, and some haven't.
Yeah.
I still feel occasionally the pat on the head from somebody giving you a compliment that you know perfectly well they don't mean.
Right.
But it's just a way of, and I don't mean literally a pat on the head, but that's what that's what it feels like.
Right.
So I do still experience that even now at this age, which surprises me, but then it doesn't. Right. Because they just haven't grown.
So, I mean, I think that goes to my point that men have not caught up with what we have learned as women. And our young men, sadly, have not learned those lessons also.
Right.
And that's why we can get into, there's still such a huge problem of domestic violence in this country.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Part of it born by the patriarchal nature of our culture that needs to change, and we'll get into that. So, from all these experiences you had in the business world, what did you want us to take from your book about that? What insights did you learn?
Well, the changes that we were making at that time, and how we were working at doing that, and I think about, you just mentioned domestic violence and that aspect of things. In my book, I talk about the creation of the Women's Network, Southeastern Connecticut Women's Network, which I'm the founder of. But at the same time, we had a group of women, as you well know, starting the Women's Center of Southeastern Connecticut, today known as Safe Futures, Inc. And that was 30 years ago.
Right.
You know, so
40 years ago now. Safe Futures has been around since 40 years now.
40 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
My math's off.
Right.
Yeah. But I talk about that in the book as well, because the proceeds of my book are all going to benefit Safe Futures.
Wonderful.
And that stems back to, I didn't realize it until I started writing the book, how much it had bothered me that while I was living in Boston, there was a couple living next door, and we'd be awakened at 2 o'clock in the morning with what sounded like drunken brawls, and her head coming against the wall to our apartment, and that kind of thing. And you know, you go through and you just kind of bury it. You move on in your life, you move away from that apartment area and all that, go out to Auburn and back home and all these things. You don't think about it. It wasn't until I was writing the book that I realized how much that had influenced me.
Yeah, yeah. So, at some point, you went off to Iowa or something to get school.
Yes, from the bank. I was working full time at the bank. Realized I needed to complete my bachelor's degree because this young man who was a Cornell graduate kept throwing it in my face that I didn't have a degree. And I thought, okay, we're going to correct that. And so I went off to Iowa to complete my degree, but it was a work-study program.
Did the business give you a sabbatical or let you do?
No, I took vacation time to do the residency requirement on campus. And it was over a 3-year period that I did this, so I took my vacation those years.
Oh, so you did that on your vacation. You didn't live in Iowa the complete time?
No.
Oh, that's interesting.
No. I was completing courses that were monitored by their instructors and all of that, so I was building the courses. But then I had to do a complete residency requirement.
Okay.
That was only 3 weeks. So I was able to do that by going for vacation.
All right, and then there was another school you went to after that, right? Did you get do another program?
I went on to, again, the bank sent me to a program out at Northwestern University, which was the equivalent of a master's, but in the trust business, because I was always in the trust and estate business while I was in banking. So I don't have the traditional banking experience that most people say, oh, she's a banker. No, I was really more of a trust and estate.
And estates.
Yeah.
And so how did you move up? Tell me about the trajectory of your life at Hartford National. How did you move up?
Well, part of it was in 1987. You know, I joined the bank in 65, so in 87 is when the manager was leaving, and I was made the acting manager. And so I put my application in for the regional manager's job for the eastern third of the state. And they had actually offered me that position down in Stamford, but I'm a New London gal. I'm southeastern Connecticut. I love this area. I don't want to go to Stamford. That's like being part of New York City. I'm not a big city girl. And so I went off, oh dear, I lost my train again. Just drew a blank.
That's all right. That's okay. You didn't go to Stamford. You wanted to stay in this area.
Yes, I stayed in New London. And it was the Thames Club that was going to prevent me from joining.
Oh, that was the Thames Club.
That's when it came. Yes.
All right, we've come full circle back to the Thames Club.
Exactly.
And that's why you feature that in your book, because that was a big breakthrough.
Absolutely.
For you and for many other women.
And letting the women in. And I didn't hold office until we were coming out of the COVID.
Right.
Out of the pandemic recently. Never held office in all those years. And the treasurer was leaving for Colorado, and they needed a treasurer. And so who did they have but a banker? So a banker could do the treasury. Well, that's been a major job since we're coming out of COVID. And I'm now in the process of training my successor, because
But you said you retired 5 years ago.
I retired 5 years ago, but yeah, we had the COVID.
Okay.
So thank God I didn't wait to travel until I retired.
Right. So what was the highest rank that you achieved before your retirement?
I was vice president and trust officer.
Okay. And
regional manager.
So you wanted to show in the book how the community advanced, how you broke through with the Thames Club and in your work.
Right.
And how you talk a little bit about the Women's Network. Why did you decide to do that? Because
the men could join Rotary, Kiwanis, Lions, and they had all these organizations. We had Seroptimus, but we could only meet in the evening. And so it ended up being an older, single woman's kind of group, and not the interaction of the people you're working with in the workplace. And
was the idea, did you develop, who decided that that word networking would be, you know, that was not a word we learned growing up. It's a new word in the business world.
It was a newer word at that time.
Yeah.
And that's why we called it, you know, Southeastern Connecticut Women's Network, and I was the founder of it. But at the same time, as we said before, the Women's Center was becoming Safe Futures, which it is.
And you were in the ground floor of that as well.
Right, and we partnered from the very beginning.
Right.
I've never held office at Safe Futures or anything of that, but I've always worked. Because I used to administer, when I was at the bank, I was handling private foundations. So the Palmer, Franklin Lewis Palmer Fund, Bowdoin Wine Fund, I talk about those in the book as well. And I just had a love for foundation work.
Right.
You know, working with nonprofits.
Right.
So, you know, arm's length.
Yeah.
In working with, like, Safe Futures, I had to be at arm's length. I couldn't be on their board or anything like that.
Any other insights about working with women, developing projects with women?
To begin with, I felt women were our own worst enemies because we were always sort of nitpicking and you know, nattering and all this. When people started saying, okay, we can rise above this. Because I remember going
lack
down...
of confidence, it seems like, too.
Right.
You know, can we do it? We're afraid we can't do it. I mean, even today, studies have shown that when it comes to women touting their accomplishments, men are much better at that. They can brag about stuff that they don't really deserve bragging about, and women don't brag about stuff they should be bragging about. I mean, as a generalization.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. That's so true.
Yeah.
So true. But that's why, because when Jeannie insisted that I write this book, and I said, I don't want it to be a great I am book. You know, that was my initial reaction. I don't want it to be a great I am book. And so I've brought through all the different things, the people that I've worked with and all of this over the years, because it's not just one woman at a time. It's just working with others and making a change in your community.
And you also help, as you said, culturally with getting the Guard back to being a beautiful playhouse when it was an old movie theater, like so many old movie theaters, many of which thankfully have been revived into beautiful playhouses like the Goodspeed Opera House and other. Many went the way of destruction, sadly. So that was an important thing. What's been the most rewarding community project that you think that you've been involved in? What do you think?
I think it goes to Safe Futures.
Safe Futures, yeah.
Because you're working behind the scenes, you're interacting with survivors, and we can learn so much from them. I know that Safe Futures is in the process of raising money to build their new facility out on the Hartford Road in Waterford, and it's so needed to bring all the services that they provide together under one roof.
Right.
For the benefit of the clients.
Family Justice Center.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And the clients have had a say in what they were missing, what they needed.
Right.
And Safe Futures has listened to them.
And of course we hope that we reach even more people, because it's still way too prevalent in our culture, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the location, I think, is absolutely perfect because it's so close to 3 highways.
Right. It's going to be in Waterford.
Yeah.
Right.
On the Hartford Road, but you're between 395 and 95.
So in your experience, did you come across women who faced abuse?
Yes. And I always carry their cards with me so that I can hand it to somebody. And there's a number that they will give out. It's on the card.
And have you seen success stories where women that were in trouble have now made successful lives?
Well, and part of what I saw when I was a manager, you know, being head of the region and everything else, that I had men and women working for me, and there were different people that you knew something wasn't right with that individual. You didn't know what it was because we didn't hear anything about these things at that time. So you couldn't, but then they started putting in the rules and regulations. You couldn't hug somebody. You couldn't, you know, no touchy-feely kinds of things. You just had to do everything verbally kind of thing. And that's
Do you
why
think people reached out to you and knew that you were sympathetic and could be a good ear for them? Do you think so?
They have over the years, yes.
Yeah, well, that's very important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I hear certain situations and I'm like, oh my God, they've got to get out of that situation. But it's so difficult to make that decision to move on. You can't make the decision for them.
You can just let them know that help is there. If
exactly.
They want it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And encourage them to at least talk with counselors.
So what else? What do you think of this? I don't want to give you any trick questions, but the 2 or 3 most important insights that we could take from your writing this book.
Be your own person, and you can achieve anything you want to, and that's what I want the young people to read in this book. I've tried to aim it towards our younger people so they will learn from the experiences that we've had over the years, and know that they can dream big and they can bring those dreams to life.
Okay, but what do we still need to fix in our culture, from your point of view?
We just have to help encourage people and get away from all the negativity that's in our lives. We've got to look more to the future and be positive about things. And I know it's hard to do it at times when you hear about all the horror stories that are out there and things, but there is help at the end of the line.
Well, you had a small family, but you had wonderful parents who backed you up.
Exactly.
And gave you the support. So many of our young people today are roaming around without those supports. How do we help them?
People in business have got to be mentors.
Yeah.
They've got to encourage them.
Now, how many mentees do you have? People that you've mentored along the way, have you had those young people who look to you?
And that's part of the reason I picked. Let me talk a little bit about the book, the cover.
Yeah, let's look at our slides because we have that.
Yeah. Okay.
Can we take a look at the slides about Millie's book? There you go. Yes. Well, there's Millie. That's a nice photo, Millie. Now let's go to the next slide. There you go. Okay, that's the book.
That's my book.
All right.
Sunrise, Sunset, and it's a milkweed plant that was done by a painting my sister did. And I think of all those silky filaments that go floating off in the air. You never quite know where they're going to land or how they're going to affect anything. Are they going to grow other plants? Are they just going to rest on somebody's shoulder or land on a coat or just what?
And you
well, think of the thousands of lives we all come in contact with. And that's what it spoke to me. And I said, that's got to be the cover of my book.
Okay. And the sunrise, sunset. Oh, here's the back of the book. Talk about that. The back of the book.
This is a photograph taken by Vinnie Scarano, a local photographer, wonderful photographer, taken from the Amistad on the Thames River, looking at the city of New London. So since most of my banking career was here in New London, I thought that was very appropriate, and all the nonprofits that I've worked in here in southeastern Connecticut. So that's the cover of my book.
The back of the book, right. All right, let's look at the next slide. Tell us about that.
This is the Thames Club. This is an old picture of the Thames Club. This one doesn't have a postcard, actually, of the Thames Club. And it appears that it was brick at that time. It's a gray.
Is it on? What street is it on?
It's on the corner of Washington and State Street.
Washington.
The address is State Street, 290 State Street. This was the male-only social club that I mentioned before. And there's another one that's a more up-to-date picture.
So this is when did they leave business and they'd go there with their pipes and cigars and fabulous food? And
they did. Back in the day when it was all male.
Yeah. Right.
Now we're a non-smoking club. And
but food is still a good part of it.
It is a big part of it, absolutely. And we have bowling. The lower part, there's an addition that was put on the building that runs down the side of Washington Street. That's actually the bowling alley.
All right, let's go to the next slide because I think that's the postcard, right?
Nope.
Is that?
No, that's also the old picture of the club itself before the bowling alley was added.
That's 1869. It was when it was established. Wow.
Exactly.
And when was it crashed by you? When did you crash in?
Believe it or not, that was 1992.
1992. That's way too long.
Yes, it was 123 years after the formation of the club that they finally admitted women.
Wow, way too long. Okay. Next,
Yes.
Let's see the next slide. All right, let's talk about this.
Okay. In my book, I talk about a motto that my family lived by. These are my single aunts that lived next door, my mother and her fourth sister, for whom I was named, Mildred. And let me live in the house by the side of the road and be a friend to mankind. And this is what we lived by. And just recently, within the past year or two, my cousin's son's wife was at a tag sale and happened to spot this embroidered piece with a whole saying on it.
Wow.
And this was obviously since my book was published. And she presented it to me. Well, I cried when I got that.
Wow.
And we were up in Massachusetts with the family. And when I came home, all I could think about on the way home was, where in my home? It's got to have the perfect spot. And so coming home, walking in the front door, I said, that's it, over the fireplace in the living room.
Right.
And so this is what is over my fireplace.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. And so it's very, very special and interesting, because I've heard other people pick up on it since I wrote about it in the book as well. And they say, oh, I just saw something about that, with it being printed elsewhere, kind of thing, or they were in a shop or whatever.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back to you. We're going to summarize and talk about. So, Millie, what a nice journey you've been on.
It's been a wonderful journey, and the good Lord's been with me all this time.
All right, and so tell me, what's the future, and what would you most want to say now in summary?
Well, I also want to say, in the book I mentioned that I had studied classical guitar. We've always been a musical family, and so one of the things that since I retired 5 years ago, I've also gotten back to playing my classical guitar. Oh. Well, once the book was finished.
Okay.
I didn't dare do it before.
How long did you take to write the book?
I spent the first year laying the whole thing out, and then I worked with a writing coach, Nick Checker,
you did have a writing coach.
For 3 years. And so it was just published July 4th of 21.
All right. You think you're going to write some other things, or are you done?
I've been saying right along it's one and done.
Okay.
Because I can't feature living another 80 years and putting everything into the book the way I did here. But there may be, because I do post on Facebook and have quips and trying to promote the book, obviously. Makes a wonderful holiday gift with holidays coming up. And I've gotten back to playing the classical guitar. Now everybody, the minute I mention it, everybody says, oh, you got to play for us. No, I'm not there yet.
Not ready yet. All right.
I'm not
when
ready
you're
yet.
ready, you let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, I want people to know that at 80 years old, you can get back to doing something you've always enjoyed.
Right. So what we learn is we're in the December of our years, right? But this December is going to be very long.
Absolutely. I expect to be around to at least 100.
It's going to be very long.
Yes.
I think you will be. And just any final thoughts before we sign off?
I just want to thank everybody, and it's been a wonderful journey, and I hope other people have shared. I'd love to hear from people. So yes, I have cards that go along with my book that have a special email address.
But they can find you on Facebook if they want to look you up.
They can find me on Facebook, and absolutely. So
okay.
Yes.
And we'll see you around.
Wonderful.
All right.
Yes.
Well, thank you, everybody, for a nice December show. Enjoy the rest of the month, and we'll see you next time on Talkback. Bye. Bye. Let's shake hands. Okay.
My pleasure.
Okay.
Yes, thank you so much, Sheila.
All right. Yeah.